Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Invermore.
Well, let me know how you are today, how you're feeling. Are you looking forward to this good weather that we're supposed to be getting? It's supposed to be very nice over the weekend. Are all the kids back in school? No, they're not back in school next week, so we still have all that good weather to come too when they do end going back to school. Also on the show today, when you go through a treatment of cancer, you think to yourself, that's it. You know, life's going to be back to normal, or maybe that's what we all think, that life's going to get back to normal, but it's not the case. And by his own admission, Simon Harris says that there's not enough supports for people there afterwards, but we are going to be talking about the implications of that on the show today, and also asking, do you live with a complainer? Now, as I said to Ollie and Yvonne there, it's bad enough working with a constant moaner, but what if they're your other half? How complaining can take a toll on your relationship? That's what we're dealing with Bernadette Ryan on the programme this morning. And we're going to be talking about the former Presbytery in Georgia Street in the city and what should happen to it. You heard it in our news bulletin there. What would you like to see happen to it, and any other buildings around that you think we could be making better use of? You can let me know on 083 3333 975. That's how you get in touch with the programme via text. You can use WhatsApp if you prefer, or you can call 051 846 123. Facebook and Twitter also open to you, of course. You can use those if you want to get in touch as well. But first up this morning, a new report has shown that more than 1,500 pubs in rural Ireland have ceased to trade since 2005. Now, the report was compiled by the drinks industry group DIGI. I'm going to be talking to the CEO of the Vintners Federation of Ireland, who's also a member of that group, in just a moment. He's called Padraig Cribben. But first of all, we sent Aisling Boland out to get the views of publicans in Waterford. So she got the views, first of all, of management of the popular city pubs, Jeff's and Tully's.
There's a huge number of costs associated with running a pub that have crippled small rural pubs and pubs that would have been in families for generations. Things like insurance, rates would be the two kind of standouts. I think the insurance piece has been talked about an awful lot recently, and it's a crippling cost for pubs. I think for rural areas, drink driving has had a really massive impact. I think people have changed their drinking habits for a number of reasons. People are more health conscious now. We see the growth of zero alcohol products. That's as much in part to drink driving legislation as it is in terms of people being aware of what they're drinking and how it's affecting them.
It's a combination of smoking ban, recession in 2008, cheap beer in the supermarkets. A lot of that younger generation from during the recession have emigrated and haven't come back.
And she's also been talking to Tom Ryan from Phil Grind's pub on Johnstown. Now, you have to excuse the sound quality of some of these because there's a bit of music in the background. We can't expect everybody to stop having fun because we're in there trying to get some reaction from them. So this is what Aisling got there.
In general, the pub trade is it's a dying trade. It's falling off every year. You can blame societal changes. You can blame off sales. You can blame people have maybe change of habits, and you can blame smoking bans. You can blame people having money now to have Sky Sports at home and have their own entertainment at home.
OK, now as I said, Padraig Cribben is CEO of the Vintners Federation of Ireland. He's also a member of the group that compiled that report, the drinks industry group. They're called DIGI. Padraig, good morning.
Morning, Marie.
The figures for Waterford show a decrease of just over 18% in the number of rural pubs. What are you attributing this decline to? Is it a number of factors?
Yes, indeed. There are a number of factors that are feeding into the fact that there are less pubs around today than there were a decade ago. I suppose in reality, first of all, we had the recession. A lot of young people left, and they were, I suppose, the lifeblood of the trade to a certain extent. There is no doubt that lifestyles have changed. People are drinking in different ways and they have different expectations. But there's also the scenario where there has been very significant regulatory impositions on the trade. And rural Ireland generally seems to be a forgotten place, whether it be around broadband, whether it be around jobs, And you only have to look at the closures of things like Garda stations, in some cases schools, post offices, banks. So we're suffering from a Dublin-centric approach by successive governments, I should say. And that has led to a lack of jobs in rural Ireland. And, the lifeblood of any community is jobs. Jobs gives income for money to go around, and that's the lifeblood of communities.
And what would you do to change that?
Well, I think there are a number of things that need to be done. If I look, for example, if I look simply at the trade that I represent, we have very high impositions of taxes. We have the second highest rate of excise in Europe. And it's not just that we're second in the league, we're way ahead of everybody else. So there is an opportunity for government in the upcoming budget to actually address that, because that impacts a lot more outside of, particularly in tourist areas, and there's plenty of areas around Waterford that are very big in tourism, and it's seen as a negative for tourists. The other thing that has happened over the last number of years is that many publicans have divested into food to improve the offering. And in one fell swoop, government in the last budget added 4.5% VAT, which is really 4.5% off the bottom line, and has made a lot of those businesses unviable. In the broader sense, I think it's very clear we need to have policies that are geared towards encouraging jobs into rural Ireland. And by rural Ireland, I mean outside of a semicircle from Drogheda to Bray, taking in Navan and Naas. It's outside of that area. So whether it's Waterford, whether it's Wexford, whether it's New Ross, whether it's Cork, I'm not talking about having jobs, having big factories in the middle of a rural area. But, if you have significant jobs in a city like Waterford or a town like Dungarvan, the rural areas feed into that. And that's what's needed, and that's what's not there.
Because you're right. I mean, rural Ireland seems to suffer disproportionately when all these decisions are making. I mean, I don't think anybody would argue about, the drink driving laws, but in actuality, it does affect people living in a rural area more.
Of course it does, but you only have to look at, if you take the current government, for example, and take the makeup of it, there are 9 constituencies in the greater Dublin city and county. 11 constituencies. I wouldn't have a problem with that in the sense that there's a big proportion of people living there. But out of those 11, there are 9 seats at the cabinet table. Now that's totally disproportionate. And that feeds into a way of thinking at the nervous system of decision making that has no understanding of or empathy with a line, that line that I've drawn and I've spoken about in that semicircle from Drogheda to Bray, as it were. So the thinking is there because that's what they know. That's what I was going to say clique, but I can't call it a clique, but it's that cohort of politicians. They don't know rural Ireland. And if you don't know rural Ireland, how in the name of God can you legislate for it?
And you mentioned earlier on the rate of excise, and you said it's considerably more. It's actually like a quarter more. That's an awful lot in terms of other EU countries. Like wine, 25% higher in other EU countries.
If it were only a quarter more, it wouldn't be too bad. The reality is, if you take a pint, a simple pint, I'll give you 2 examples. A simple pint, the excise on it here is 55 cents. The excise on the same pint in Germany is 5 cents. So it's 10 times. And I'll give you a simple thing, a bottle of whiskey. A bottle of Irish whiskey produced not very far from you in Waterford. The combined VAT and excise on that in Ireland is 15.66. If I take that same bottle of whiskey and I take it to Milan or Turin in Italy, the combined VAT and excise on it is €6.50, a difference of €9.16. So it's not that we're up there in the league. It's the difference from where we are to where others are. There is no excise whatsoever on wine in France or Portugal or Spain. Whereas here, if you take the excise and put the VAT on that, you're talking about over €4 a bottle. So it's absolutely crippling, and it's no wonder that when visitors come here, when tourists come here, that they're actually saying, God, the price of drink is high here. And we can tell them why it's high, because our government has decided it's going to be high.
And I think everybody always gives out when, you see in soaps and everything that everybody converges around the pub. But there's a reason for that. It's a place in a rural area where everybody can come together. And it's like in a lot of instances, the local is the hub of the community where, everything starts out from there, and it really is the heart of a particular village. And to lose so many like that, it must feel, rural Ireland must feel like it's just forgotten at this stage.
Well, you see, it's not, as I said earlier, it's not just the pub, it's the post office.
Yeah.
Where people went and congregated on a Friday morning, whether they were collecting pensions or whatever. It's the lack of security in the sense of Garda stations closing. It's the lack of a banking capacity and facility. But you're right. I mean, the pub, people like to pontificate about the problems with pubs. People who have a problem with alcohol will get alcohol whether there's a pub there or not. And it is unfortunate that there is a cohort who do misuse alcohol. Everybody is aware of that. And the reality is that, having less pubs certainly won't solve that problem. I think the good thing about pubs in rural Ireland is that the publican is himself or herself a part of the community. They know the people that have problems with alcohol. And in a lot of cases, they're very sympathetic and empathetic with those people and actually help to sort the problems out. Whereas if those people are going to the supermarket and buying the cheap alcohol, there is nobody to tell them, look, Johnny, or look, Mary, I think you probably have enough for tonight. So, and they are, as you say, the hubs of community where there are lots of communities that don't have community centres. They don't have a place to meet. So there is nothing wrong. As a matter of fact, it's quite a good thing to have a place like a pub where various organisations can meet if necessary.
Would you be worried it's going to get worse going forward, Padraig?
Well, the one thing I would say is that I would have absolute confidence that there's a very sound and solid future for the pub trade in Ireland. You only have to look at the research by Fáilte Ireland with visitors. Number one thing they want to do when they come to Ireland, want to visit a pub, want to be able to say that they had some fun or crack in a pub. And the reality is that people come to Ireland to meet the people. They don't come to Ireland, I'm looking out the window at the minute, they certainly don't come to Ireland for the weather. They may come for the scenery, but the abiding memory people have is of the people. And while they will meet the people in various places, where better than listening to some Irish music or listening to some music of your choice in a pub over a pint. And that's what people want. So I do believe there's a great future. Yes, there are challenges. There are challenges created along the lines that I've spoken about. There are challenges that are created along areas that you mentioned, like drink driving. But there are other challenges where almost all of the pubs in Ireland are family-owned, family-run businesses. And when government introduce legislation, they generally introduce legislation which is geared towards big business. But the legislation then has to be applied by somebody employing 2 or 3 or 4 people who doesn't have a human resource department, doesn't have an administration department, doesn't have a marketing department. So there's no sense, and this is not just pubs, it's small shops, it's hairdressers, it's all of those people that keep economies ticking over, and the level of red tape that is being created is absolutely stifling for those small businesses.
Padraig Cribben, CEO of the Vintners Federation of Ireland, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you.
Let me know what you think about what Padraig had to say there. Do you think he's right? There is a Dublin-centric approach to everything, and it's quite different in Dublin, and that there's, you can get from A to B pretty easily. There's a good public transport system in most areas, and there's plenty of pubs around the place, God knows. And if you're living in a rural area yourself, what's the situation like where you live? How much do you value your local pub? Do you go there anymore and maybe you don't go anymore because you just can't afford it. Let me know your thoughts on 083 3333 975. That's how you get in touch, or call 051 846 123. Back after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to Mulligan's. Did you know you can collect your Blue Club points online? See mulliganspharmacy.com.
You are welcome back to the programme. This texter says, hi, if the publicans were not ripping people off, the pubs might be in good stead. Every time the government puts 5 cents on the pint, the publicans put 10 cents on it, according to this person. Where is the fairness? They have the poor mouth on all the time. But why would the government be putting 5 cents on it in the first place? They're not getting enough with the amount of excise on it. I mean, you heard what Padraig had to say there, the difference between what happens. Ireland's rate of excise on wine is 25% higher than any other EU country, while the excise rate on spirits is 26% higher than the UK. For example, nearly €12 of a 70 cl bottle of Irish-produced whisky bought in an Irish off-licence goes to the government on excise tax. That is before VAT is applied, and no excise thing at all on wine produced in France. So there seems to be a little bit of a discrepancy here, but it's people's livelihoods. I mean, if you're trying to make a living, you have to increase your prices every now and then. I don't think there's any sort of conspiracy going on. They're all private enterprises. People are trying to make a living out of it. And maybe there was, like the farmers, there was a time that they were given out over what a lot of us would perceive as absolutely nothing. But maybe now they have actually valid reasons to be everything seems to be hitting the pubs an awful lot, and also rural Ireland an awful lot. But let's have your thoughts. I'll bring some of those comments to you, lots of them coming in, but keep them coming. 083 3333 975 is how you do that. But I want to turn to my next guest, who's waiting very patiently on the phone, and that is Johnny Cloono, Waterford People Before Profit. You're very welcome to the programme, John.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you very much.
Now, the reason that we're talking this morning is, you would have heard on our news bulletins, the former Presbytery in Waterford City Centre, People Before Profit, want something done about this, basically.
Yeah, Maria, we just think that, look, it's an important historic building, and it's been left idle now for nearly 20 years. And it's disgraceful, that it's beginning to fall completely into disrepair. The roof is beginning to collapse. There's dampness. There's a walled garden to the rear, and there's easy access for sort of vandals and anti-social elements. So there's a real danger that, the building could be set on fire, the plumbing, and that would impact negatively as well on that wonderful vintage rooms, that Sarah Jane is operating. So we're concerned about that. And Waterford has a horrendous record in terms of our built heritage. In the past, we've pulled down medieval cathedrals, that sort of stuff, rail stations, all that sort of stuff. We bulldozed urban Viking Waterford under City Square. So we just think that it's an absolute shame that this building is left go the way it is. And if we're saying essentially is, if it was in our city, Marie, in the country, this would be seen as a priority to maintain it and bring it back into use. And, we also think that a city that kind of looks after its built heritage, its history and archaeology in general, exudes a kind of a confidence, and it also attracts inward investment, and because it reflects kind of the ethos of a city, and also people will want to come live, work and play here as well as just tourists visiting. So for all these reasons, we think that this building needs to be brought back into use. And, it's magnificent. We occupied it there in terms of last September as part of housing agitation and that. And we were stunned to see the quality of it. There's big generous rooms, high ceilings, there's Italianate sort of plaster work, there's Doric columns on the door cases, fan lights, there's all that sort of stuff.
And what was the original point of leasing it from Waterford, the Diocese of Waterford and Lismore? What was the thought process behind that, do you know, Johnny?
Well, I'm not 100% sure. We've been trying to ascertain what the situation is, and even in fact, as far as we know, if you are in charge or own a listed building, you're obliged to maintain it and look after its upkeep. But from what we can gather, it seems to us, although you'll probably have to go to the Bishop's Palace and one of their spokespeople to find out this, but it seems that they've offloaded it to the council. And presumably the council has responsibility.
But the council took it over, so they must have thought, we could do what with it?
Yeah, but it's 20 years now, and there's no attempt. At least we can't ascertain whether there's been any application made to the Heritage Council, which have funds, substantial funds for restoring properties like this. And we don't know whether they've asked government or whether they've hired architects or professionals to do a survey to see what needs to be done. But it does require a lot of refurbishment. And we just think that it's a real shame that it's not brought back into use, because it's an important it's important in terms of the historical streetscape of Georgia Street, and the city centre in general. And, we think that the council should really start moving, because, as I said, there's funding there, and there's other groups that would probably get involved and add to in terms of the Georgia Street and various other cities in Dublin. So all around the country, for years, where they have these historic buildings, they've been restoring them and using them to their advantage in terms of tourism and that sort of stuff. And there's a myriad of uses this building could be put to, really. For instance, you could have apartments for the architecture college, the Wick campus just close by. You could have students there. You could have also art practitioners with spaces there. You could have a whole host of other, even people, single people who are homeless, awaiting accommodation transition. You could have that sort of stuff there. And we're saying as well that there's a wonderful walled garden to the rear. And if that was opened up as part of a redevelopment of the building, it would open up that whole area where the beach tower is. The 12th century walls, towers at the back there. There's a carpet. So there's also a little archway that's underused, and it's very dark in the evening. So that could be added on in terms of maybe an access through that to the building. So you're really limited by your imagination, I'm afraid, in terms of what needs and could be done with the building. And we're just urging the council to begin to move on. And to that effect, we're going to write to the city manager and the councillors, asking them, have they any plans, and we'll see what their answers are. But we want to maintain a campaign and try and win public support for the regeneration and restoration of this building. And to that effect, we have an online petition at the People Before Profit Facebook page, and we'll be also on the street in the coming period as well to build on that, because we've got a magnificent response last Saturday outside.
But Johnny, you occupied it last September. Have you not gotten any answers to these questions between then and now?
No, I've been asking various individuals, and we did send emails to councillors and that, but we haven't been able to ascertain. As well as that, of course, People Before Profit, we have a wide variety. We're interested in homelessness, housing situation, the environment, health, education. So we're a campaigning organisation that have a whole host of other interests, but we're also interested in our built environment and the city which we live, because if there's a high quality kind of public realm and a high kind of understanding about the importance of our built heritage, well, that enhances all our, and it sets up the city for future investment and tourism. So it's because Heritage, we've decided to launch this campaign, and we're hoping as well, Maria, to when the students come back, we're hoping to have a public meeting and possibly get someone. See, we're not professionals in this area in terms of any professional expertise about buildings, right? We're just interested kind of citizens, and so we're asking people if anyone have any expertise, and we're anxious to get involved, and we'd click contact us on our Facebook page. And one other thing, Marie, as well, you can actually go onto our Facebook page and look at the interior, because Una Dunphy made a little video film. She walked around all the...
Yeah, I remember seeing it.
Yeah, and it's very, there's wonderful spiral staircase. If you think of the wonderful vintage rooms, and tea rooms that Sarah Jane and our people run, it's similar in many ways to that, and that gives an idea of what could and should be done with this wonderful building. So
I suppose when you have something like heritagey, if that's such a word like that,
yes.
It's once it's gone, and there'll come a time when you won't be able to restore it, like really, because it'll have gone too far. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, you're spot on, Marie, absolutely. And if the ceiling collapses, could bring down other floors, and there could be spillage from the walls onto the street as well then, so people could be... So there's a health and safety issue probably there as well. And can you imagine, the street is becoming... that whole area now has been developed as... we've been calling it for years, a cultural quarter.
Yeah.
And this has so much... This building has so much possibility. So,
well, you know what I think now? All those buildings, like up over all the shops, They could all be used to house people. We just have we just need to start looking at things in a different way in terms of housing. I have to leave it there, Johnny. Thanks a million for talking to me.
Okay, Marie, thank you.
See you, good luck. Bye.
Right,
That's John Cloono there, Waterford People Before Profit. What's your thoughts on what he had to say there? And council, it's over to you. What are your plans for it? What did you lease it for in the first place? And what's the delay in getting something done to it? If any of you could provide any answers for us from that point of view, we'd love to hear from you on the programme, because, there's always two sides to every story. Now, 083 3333 975 is how you get in touch with the programme. 051 846 123. And I'll bring some of your comments when we come back after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to Mulligan's. Did you know you can collect your Blue Club points online? See mulliganspharmacy.com.
You are welcome back to the programme. It's Maria in for Damien, and on the subject of pubs, this texter says if they put some folk and ballad music in the pubs, the tourists love this music, and that's why Kilkenny is booming, says the texter. Can you ask your guest why the price is so different in different pubs? Some publicans are just greedy, says another texter. They're pubs. They can kind of, if people are willing to pay the price, it's like anything else. There'd be a recommended retail price, and if they decide to increase that, then they're private enterprises and you don't have to pay it. You just go somewhere else. The money that I'm paying in USE, property tax, etc., used to finance my social life. Now I can't afford to go out, says a texter, which probably encompasses what everybody's problem is who has to struggle at this stage. A litre of vodka in Ireland is €33. In Spain it's 15. Rip off Ireland, says Tom in Tramore. Somebody else says, morning, I was up in Dublin for the rugby and went to Temple Bar for a pint. I couldn't believe the girl when she says $7.90 for a pint at daytime, says another texter. There may be less pubs, but there are less drinkers. Same amount of drinkers, more profit for the remaining pubs, says another one. But that's working on the assumption that there's been no increase in anything else in all that time. I was asking, is it all like Dublin-centric? It's always been Dublin, Ireland, says another texter. And somebody else says, where did you get the word gotten? I have private access to all these words. I have a special place that I go where I get all these words that I use. 083 3333 975 for your texts, 051 846 123 for your phone calls. Let's talk about the Gardaí now and the big restructuring thing. We'll hear more detail on that as the day goes on, but already some of the Gardaí at superintendent and chief superintendent level are expressing serious concerns at the new model and wondering what changes it will bring about. Alan Bailey is an ex-Garda detective sergeant and he's on the line now. You're very welcome to the programme, Alan.
Good morning, Maria. How are you?
Now, as an ex-Garda detective sergeant, you're probably in a position to actually give us your opinion on this. If you were still in the force, what would your thoughts be on what you've read so far?
Well, from what I've read so far, and of course it's a lot of speculation, but in many ways it's addressing changes that are long overdue. The current divisional boundaries, the majority of those were laid down and used by the Royal Irish Constabulary, and that's over 100 years ago, before the foundation of the state. It doesn't take into account the changes in population growth, different demographics like that. We've stuck firmly with what was there for the last 100 years, and I mean we can all see that it doesn't work in many instances. So I certainly would welcome it.
And it seems to be that this will have more Gardaí at the front line. Would you, from your read of it, would you say that that's likely to happen?
I would hope that that's what would happen. I'd be afraid that it'd be used as an excuse for maybe cutting back in some areas with the feet on the street sort of thing. But overall, it should be something that, I mean, if you're changing the divisions from 28 to 19, well, that's 9 divisional staff that have to be relocated out of offices, and the place for them is out on the street.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge job. The divisional office is a big job in itself, and takes a lot of manpower. All the talk of civilianisation, that never really got to that level. So I certainly would welcome it, and I would hope that it would have a positive knock-on effect.
Now, the new Eastern region is going to incorporate Meath, Westmeath, Laois, Offaly, Kildare, Wicklow from the current Eastern region, and Kilkenny, Carlow, Waterford and Wexford from the South Eastern region. Yeah. Would you have any concerns about that? That seems huge.
It is huge, but I mean, in this day and age, you're only an hour, 2 hours away from most places. If you look at the network of roads that we have in the country now, as long as the force is deployed properly, I don't have any issue or problem with that. But as I say, my fear is that they decide, well, look, we don't need, maybe we cut back on the amount of manpower we have here and not take into account local demands and local needs.
Because I think that's always been a criticism of the Gardaí, that sort of local link has been lost in many instances.
In many instances it has been, and we've seen that with the closure of all the various Garda stations, that you've lost the man on the street. You know, the man who knew what was going on in his area, someone, a friend to all the locals, someone to turn to in time of need. He's no longer there, and that's what I say. My one fear would be that the management structure that would be put in place would take even further from that.
It'll be interesting to see. I suppose the devil will be in the detail, won't it?
The devil will be in the detail, and in many ways, Maria, I would be saying that it could be a great time to be in the Garda Síochána. Through Harris, under his leadership, there's huge changes coming in, you know, and they're all positive changes. They're taking on a lot of sacred cows over there who are never touched, and maybe it's time to bring policing into the 21st century, let alone the 20th century, you know.
Do you reckon there'll be resistance, though? Because we're not very good with change in this country, really. We go on about how much we want it, and then when somebody tries to give it to us, we don't like it.
We shy away from it. If you look at the moment, there's 28 divisions. They'll be reduced to 19 divisions, and each division will have 4 superintendents. But there certainly is a drop in the number of superintendent rank. But then they're talking about increasing the powers, which they have the Garda inspectors and the Garda chief superintendents. They were nominal ranks without a whole lot of power for many years, but it's all falling on the local super. That will all change now.
And do you think if you were a new guard going in, Alan, that you would be concerned for your career trajectory, if you like, that, you know, that there wouldn't be that many top jobs to be had with this?
The other way of looking at that, Marie, is that those that rise to the top in a smaller field should be all the better for it and should be even better candidates. Maybe there's positions filled and people selected for the positions that, I don't know, they weren't suitable and were never going to work. So maybe in many ways it's time.
Well, I'm sure we'll be watching it with interest to see exactly what they're going to be talking about today. Alan, thanks as always for talking to me.
Take care.
See you, bye-bye. That's Alan Bailey, ex-Garda detective sergeant there. As I said, we'll get more detail on that, and no doubt, given the impact that it's going to have on Waterford, the programme will be returning to it for a more detailed look at the changes, what changes are going to be, what sort of an effect they'll have, and what sort of reaction those changes are going to get from the people who they will affect. Now I'll be back with more for you after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and in Tramore.
You are welcome back to the programme on the subject of pubs. John says he's lived his whole life in Mahonbridge, Kilmacthomas, and he says he went to a pub all his life. It's coming to that in 5 years' time. There will be no pub in rural Ireland. They will all be boarded up. And Tony says Ireland has the most expensive alcohol pricing in the world in pubs, and yet the minimum pricing campaigns would have us paying even more. He says it's a rip-off as it is, and that's largely why people are not going to the pubs anymore. This doesn't really make sense, though, does it, when you think it through? But let's have your thoughts on it on 083 3333 975. What's the situation like where you live? Do you still have as many pubs as you used to have? If your local closed down, would it matter to you? Do you not really care because you don't go there anymore anyway? And give us your reasons why on 083 3333 975. Now, we didn't get to this on the programme yesterday, unfortunately, so we are revisiting it today because we think it's a good one. I have on the line Chris Paye, who's General Manager at jobs.ie. You're very welcome to the programme, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
No bother. This is about your research that 1 in 5 Irish employees now have what's called a work wife or a work husband, and the benefits or maybe not benefits of same. I suppose I was reading through your research, and the idea of the kind of the office romance is in decline, and this is almost like a replacement without the romance part.
Yeah, no, it's funny really, isn't it? I suppose obviously we spend about a third of our life in work, so it's no surprise that you end up kind of very close to someone, and I suppose in a lot of these cases it's a platonic relationship, someone of the opposite sex, that you lean on them in the same way you would your husband or wife at home. You expect that they'll support you in every matter, no matter what. I actually didn't find it that surprising that it was 1 in 5, because within our building here we've 150, and I can see plenty of work wives and husbands walking around all the time, so it wasn't a big surprise to me.
And do you think it can be so bad that you won't even change job? Because I get on with Wayne so well. I get on with Wayne so well that I'm not going to. Wayne is somebody who works here, Chris. I get on with him so well, and I'm not going to move from my job because he's such a good working relationship. We have it all down, and I could move to this other job, but I'd have to leave this good, solid relationship that I have.
And that's the big benefit for an employer, and why when you see these relationships building, that you should be happy to see them, and you should almost encourage workplace friendships and relationships, because it is all about that. As I said, it's a third of our lives we spend in the workplace, and you want that to be a happy place. And life has shifted completely. We want a good work-life balance, and when you're in work, if you can find that, I suppose, balance where you've got good friendships, you can go for coffee with someone you get on well with, walk to the shop with them, go for a drink with them after work, go meet them at the weekends, then all of a sudden your work and your personal life are starting to become intertwined, and you maybe don't want to leave that behind. And from an employer's point of view, that's going to help with retention. It'll help with positive morale. So it's beneficial from both sides, both employee and employer.
Is there an expectation, though, that your work wife or your work husband would always have your back, or would they tell you that, nah, the boss was right in this instance, now you got that wrong?
Well, I think the expectation from the person who maybe is, let's say they're frustrated with something that's happened and their boss has told them to do something they're not happy with. I think the expectation from the person who has been told that is, my work wife or work husband will have my back. But again, there is a benefit to the employer, because the person who they're going to go to might actually have a rationale, it might be a bit more rational behind it, and say, well, actually, you could meet them halfway in it, or it could be a case that you're actually wrong, where if I go home and I rant to my wife, who would love to hear about my ranting with the work
about things she doesn't know anything about in the first place.
She doesn't understand the office dynamic. Maybe I'm giving her a half story. So I think you're more likely to get actually a balanced view from someone who actually knows the inside and the outside of the business that you work in on a day-to-day basis as well.
And you say in the piece that these profitable companies they're trying to foster these work marriages, for want of a better word, and they're not kind of leaving it up to people to do it themselves anymore, because people's lives are different now, and maybe they don't go to the pub on a Friday evening anymore. So they take people on these weird weekends away I think these are awful, but to take them to learn circus skills, these team building things, these weekend things, instead of just saying to people, we're going to find a way for you to get on, they take them on these weird weekends. Do they actually work?
Well, I'm actually a big fan of team building exercises. There's this big explosion now of these escape rooms, and that is getting people in a room solving puzzles together. But at the end of it, what they've actually built is a camaraderie around how can we help each other. And normally afterwards, they actually have become closer, and they genuinely, in my eyes, do work. I did one years ago. It must be 10 years ago on a farm. And it was one of the stuff we had to do was try and use a bamboo stick from a garden and bring it down to the ground without it falling over. It's impossible to describe, but it was actually it was also impossible to do. And the farmer knew that, but the way he had everyone working together, it all just turned into a big laugh. And people who you maybe didn't know as well or get on with as well, all of a sudden you were on a team with them and you saw their strengths, their personality coming out, and realised that I actually get on quite well with this person. And it does definitely foster a much better working environment.
Is it not kind of, though, enforced getting to know somebody, that maybe, if you wanted to get to know them, you're a grown adult and you could get to know them, but because you're taking on this weekend away, the bosses look and everybody's going, and you're going, oh yeah, great, grand, fine, and really you've no interest in them, you're just doing it for show.
Well, there is that, but there's also, for some people, it's not always that easy either to develop these friendships and these workplace relationships. They could be a bit shyer. Takes them a bit longer maybe to break into a group. Most businesses will have an attrition rate of between 15 and 25%. So they're losing a quarter of their staff every year, which means in a 4-year cycle these new groups are developing. And it I suppose from my side, as I would see it, if you have people who are a little bit shyer, maybe find it a bit more difficult, this is a chance for them to maybe become part of the group. And I don't see it as enforcing a kind of or trying to even foster it. I see it as trying to have a more inclusive work environment where everyone can join a group, because what you certainly don't want is cliques. You want a work wife and a work husband can be a bit of fun. But what you don't want is where you end up with 3 or 4 people who are a clique. So you want to be able to give everyone an opportunity to make sure that it's inclusive and that everyone feels they can join in and be welcome in anything they do. And I do think these social events, whether it's a weekend away, team building, whether it's a few drinks after work on a Friday or a team lunch the odd time, I do think it really helps build morale. I've seen it myself over the years, where you can bring someone into an event that maybe was quite shy, and all of a sudden the biggest character by the end of the day, and they just weren't comfortable in the previous environment.
Okay, Chris, we leave it there. Thanks for talking to me.
No worries.
See you. Good
Great
luck.
to talk to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's Chris Paye there, General Manager at jobs.ie. Do you have a work wife or a work husband? You can let me know. And how does that, or do you work in a place that there's work wife and work husband, and how do they get on? Or do you work with an actual husband and wife, and what kind of a different kettle of fish is that? 083 333 975 is how you get in touch with the programme to have your say. Back after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Intramore.
You are welcome back to the programme. This texter says, on the pub situation, times have changed. People have options now that they didn't have in the past. Dozens of TV channels covering entertainment, sports, movies, etc. They can drink in comfort at home and save money on babysitters, etc. They can go on foreign holidays with the money that they save. When people do decide to go out, it's more than likely to a restaurant they will go. People's habits have changed. How people socialise is evolving all the time, and maybe that's why the pubs are in a different situation now than when they were. If my wife and I go out, it's an average of €12, I suppose, every time I go to the bar. Then I'm looking at anything up to 18 for a taxi home. It's just too expensive, says the texter. We are 5 kilometres from our nearest village and bus stop. No taxi service. Going out and having a glass of wine with the meal is a no-no. Not everyone lives in the city, and I think that is the crux of it. That is the crux of it, because the decisions are being made by people who, if they don't live in a city, are getting paid a whack of money and dropping the odd 20 quid a couple of times a week to get a taxi home or whatever it is, means absolutely nothing to them. And Lady Caller was in a hotel a few weeks ago and got a bottle of water for €6.50. She was absolutely shocked. She won't even mention the drink price. Now, whoever decided to get us to pay for bottled water is an absolute genius, and maybe we should ask them to solve the problem for the whole country's problem. What would you do? Because you're the person that got us to drink water out of a bottle when we had it coming out of our taps for free. Plenty more coming up in the next hour of the programme, so keep it here, and I'll talk to you after the news at 11 with Judy.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Intramore.
You are welcome into the second hour of the programme. It's Maria here with you until midday. In for Damien, he'll be back with you on Monday. And we're going to be talking now about those people who have survived cancer. When you think about it, you think to yourself, OK, I've come through that battle and everything is going to get back to normal. That's maybe what the perception is for people who haven't fought that battle. But the reality seems to be very, very different because the physical, psychological and financial needs of almost 200,000 survivors of cancer are not currently being met. That's according to a report prepared for the National Cancer Control Programme. And to discuss this with me, I have Brian Creedon, who's a consultant palliative medicine physician. He's a national clinical lead for palliative care and former chair of the Solas Cancer Support Centre here in the city. Thanks very much for coming in, Brian. Because I think I did an interview about this a while ago, and it sort of struck me. I, in my innocence, would have thought that when bills were coming in, if you phoned up whoever had sent you the bill and going, listen, I have cancer at the moment and I'm just struggling a bit, that they would go, don't worry about it, you have enough on your hands, we leave it. That's not the case. Like, even in the midst of it, you still have financial demands on you, you still have all sorts of demands on you, and when you come out the other end, those demands are still there. So there is a definite need for more support, would you say?
Absolutely, and if I even to pick you up, actually, Maria, if I may, I think we know a lot of the patients I work with struggle with the battle analogy around cancer. They're not comfortable with that terminology, and I think it's a terminology we tend to put on it ourselves in terms of victory and success and so on. But anyway, yeah, absolutely, and particularly over the last 10 years when we were in recessionary times, I was very much aware of the challenges for both patients and their families. If the person who was diagnosed with cancer was the main breadwinner in the family, and also even if they weren't, the commitment of other family members to care for them, to be with them, and then foregoing their own financial struggles and so on. So it's very challenging. We know we don't have a lot of data here, but we know in the US the commonest cause for personal bankruptcy in the USA is health issues, which is very sad and frightening. And I suspect it's not that different in Ireland, and that behind a lot of the tragic stories we see of home repossessions and financial hardship, that there is illness there, be it cancer or other chronic illnesses.
And we know that the Solas Centre does absolutely sterling work. I mean, I don't think I've never heard anybody say a bad word about it. The importance of support like that, and the importance that somebody acknowledges that you need help.
Yes, and I think it's important to identify that what we have 200,000 people living in this country who've been diagnosed with cancer and have been cured, or living with cancer, and that's really important. We know that thankfully in 2019 there are many cancers that are chronic diseases, like high blood pressure, like diabetes, that you can live a very healthy and hopefully normal life. Adjustments to your treatment along the way. So it's so important that we recognise that having a cancer diagnosis now is not always doom and gloom, that there are many treatment options and so on. And even if a cure isn't an option, there are treatments which may actually give you a normal lifespan and as healthy a life as possible. You mentioned the cancer support centres and the Solas Cancer Support Centre, and I think where their role is, we know for a lot of patients when they've had a cancer diagnosis and had treatment, it's very busy. There's appointments and schedules, and often actually not even a time to think, because you have side effects of treatment and so on. And a lot of patients tell us afterwards, it's actually when they're finished the treatment, they have the psychological ramifications as well as some of the physical issues that may relate to treatment. They may have significant fatigue, that they're tired all the time. They may have they're, in terms of psychologically, they can, I suppose, I heard somebody tell me once that there is, people are, as we all do through our lives, we grow, particularly through stressful situations, and people are different, and it's to acknowledge that. And where the cancer support centres come in is to support those that need that help, both psychologically, or to provide them a sanctuary or a space where they can be themselves, say what they need to say, and have relaxation therapy and so forth. And the whole idea is empowerment, helping people to live lives and to get back to as close to normal as possible, even though we know that it's a new normal.
Yeah, and it must be quite difficult from a psychological point of view for people who feel different. Yes. And in some cases are different after a treatment for cancer, and the reaction to their family and maybe their partner, because, you know, I married this person, I saw my future with going forward and having children and living this life. Now this person maybe can't have children because of their treatment, and I have to deal with and try and process all that from a psychological point of view. That's huge as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, that there may be changes to the person's body image, that they may have had surgery to to a particular part of their body, and they feel that they're different, and that needs to be, I suppose, people need to be supported with that, and they are different. There may be fertility issues, as you mentioned, and actually some of the treatments for cancer and so on may have some more chronic problems that it's a case of looking at those issues and finding strategies to work with them, and I think it's very difficult for families and friends. What I would say is, I suppose in Ireland we have a tendency if to try and avoid difficult conversations and the elephant in the room. But actually, I think sometimes asking somebody, "How are you?" and I know you've been treated for your cancer, but actually, how are you? Because everything might not be rosy in the park, and you don't need to have the answers, but just sometimes, we've 2 ears and 1 mouth, and to use them in that proportion, just to listen, rather than not mentioning it. And I think part of the Solas Cancer Support Centre's remit is to ensure that as a community, we support those in our community, our own families, our work colleagues, and we can have those conversations. We're not afraid to bring up, actually, you've had cancer, how are you? That must be hard, actually. And
do you think maybe in our heads we almost equate it like grief? Like there's a certain time where it's okay to say, I'm very sorry for your loss, and we do all of that. But then it's, we might remind the person about this, or we might, they're going to forget, and we all step away. And whereas they're quite happy to talk about it, and they appreciate the fact that somebody cared enough to ask, which can go a long way towards making people feel
absolutely good. Very similar to grief, that if you've lost a loved one, and I've had this experience myself, where it's almost bizarre that people don't mention them after a few months, and yet they were such a significant part of your life, and you're happy. Well, when I say happy, you'd like to talk about them and acknowledge them. And similar about the cancer, it's almost as if people don't want to mention the word, it didn't happen, but actually it's been such a significant part of that person's life, and actually they have changed or grown from the experience, and it is part of their lives, and rather than not talking about it, to not to be afraid to bring it up with people, or to even to check how they're doing and how they're really doing, rather than saying, "Oh, you must be great now that you're cured or you had treatment." And so it's a very complex entity, and I think to be respectful that different individuals will have different needs. Some people will manage themselves without formal supports, but others will need supports of friends and families, or more formal support of their GP, of the cancer support services, or even medical support. And it's to seek help when you need. There are some excellent websites out there, the Irish Cancer Society, and also the cancer support centres in Waterford. We have the Solas Cancer Support Centre, but there are many others which can be identified on the Irish Cancer Society website. And I think it's to identify that, for those who've had a cancer diagnosis, even who've been cured or are living with cancer, there are ramifications for them, for their family, and not to be afraid to have that discussion and to support each other, and if you like, that idea of a compassionate community, that we mind each other, and sometimes it can just be listening. Just you don't need to have the answers. And
Simon Harris, to be fair, has acknowledged the fact that this support is needed. From a practical point of view, what would you like to see put in place for people?
So I'm often, while I haven't had a cancer diagnosis myself, I spend a lot of time with people who have had a cancer diagnosis or have a cancer diagnosis. And one of the things that's very striking for me is that during treatment, as I said earlier, it's very busy. There's lots of appointments and blood tests and treatments. And then when treatment is finished, they feel somewhat abandoned or adrift. And I think it's to build in, for me, it's to have inner systems, the way that we have routine x-rays and so on, that people are routinely directed towards the cancer support centres, towards group therapies. There's there's a number there's Strides for Life, where people exercise together, that collegiality of a shared experience and exercising together, improving their fatigue, and actually saying, it's okay and safe for me to exercise again, because often people are very unsure. What should I eat? What should I do? Maybe what does that pain mean? And it's a very frightening time afterwards. So to have support services as part of their cancer treatment paradigm, or their schedule, that it's seen as afterwards, after treatment, that there are routine group sessions and individual sessions, depending on the individual, that are offered, rather than people maybe having to seek them out themselves. Because that's difficult to, I often talk about people making that phone call to the Solas Cancer Support Centre, or walking down the pathway from the car park. That must be very frightening and difficult. But if we could make that more routine, that people see that it's part of my cancer treatment and part of my treatment for me individually. And there would be people who think they come out the other side of it and they're thinking to themselves, I now know what's important in life. I've
I'm not going to sweat the small stuff anymore. I understand all the important things, and I'm going to live every moment of every day and get the most out of the time that I have because I appreciate it. But the bills are still there. The practicalities, maybe how I'd love to work now, but I can't work. What am I going to do? From a practical point of view, would you have some kind of a fund to go? Because nobody can fake that kind of diagnosis, I presume. So somebody like yourself would go, this person qualifies for this thing. So I owe $5,000 off my mortgage. I wasn't able to pay it. That something like that is done, to just because that must be a huge weight off somebody's mind, to just go, you can cross that worry, that practical worry, off your list and get on with that new sense of purpose that you have.
Absolutely, and I would be supportive of if you like, a social care structure where there would be cognizance of people's financial difficulties, and that if they have debts and so on and they've had illness due to no action on their behalf, no fault rather, that should be taken into account. And I think as well, I suppose it's probably timely to remind people there are supports available. There's the MABS agencies, there's some of the community welfare officers. There is, and I know it's very difficult for people in the middle of what must seem like a storm in terms of trying to manage their lives, to seek professional help, particularly when you're dealing with financial institutions, or to bring a friend or a family member or somebody who has got some expertise or knowledge in the area. Because, you know, when we're all outside of our own areas of knowledge, it's very difficult, and particularly if it's a difficult time. So to engage, I think, with financial institutions if there's difficulties, and get professional help, independent professional help.
And like there, as you say, there is help out there. Make sure that you know about it. Ask somebody. Don't be sitting there worrying at home, this, that and the other. Like, ring this radio station and ask, and we might be able to point you in the right direction. There's always people who can help. And the Solas Centre, as you say, a great resource. And
Citizens Information Bureau and so on, and I think it's to seek help, but I'm not sure how we would structure a financial support package, but I agree that we need to, if we're truly motivated as a nation, to mind those who are less well off, be it through health and other issues, that we need
write
to
off debts for other people. So, you know, surely if you, I'm not talking about anyone in particular with that comment, by the way, but there are things that like people have had debts written off for, and they should be a case of, well, we'll cover that for you and you'll be fine. Just before I let you go, why don't people like battle and things like that? Because there was a time I think people thought that was empowering, and it gave you strength, that you'd overcome this. What's the new terminology, and why is that?
Yeah, and I think it's even the term survivor is controversial.
Why?
It suggests. I think it suggests to some people a suffering, and we know, talking to patients and people who've been in these situations, they find the battle analogy difficult. It doesn't suit every personality. You have to fight this. You have to go to battle. You have to win the war. Now you've won the war, and everything is hey diddly fine in the park. I think people struggle with that, and not to assume that language is comfortable. For me, it almost depersonalises the individual as well, because there's a person behind that, and it's natural to be frightened and fearful and worried and wondering what will happen, rather than maybe ignoring all those things and saying things will be fine. I think is almost unnatural, that we all have those worries, and it's to support people at those times and allow opportunities. Look, how are you? Do you want to go for a coffee? Yeah. And,
do you think it's a throwback from the time when, like, it was the big C and nobody even spoke about it, and if you got a diagnosis, you were dead, and that's why that was the end of it? Whereas now it's different, and there's very positive outcomes, and that's why we kind of, we have to judge this person up here to fight this and not give into it and not assume that it's going to be a bad outcome, because it's not anymore. Absolutely,
and many of us will have minor health conditions such as arthritis and high blood pressure, high cholesterol, that we wouldn't see as sinister as cancer, and yet there are some cancers now that are in a similar level that you will live with. They won't affect your lifespan. So I would hope, perhaps for the children of today, that the big C is a thing of the past, that children of today will see, actually, there are things I can do to reduce my likelihood of cancer: exercising, watching my weight, having the HPV vaccination programme and so on, and lifestyle choices, and as well as awareness of early cancer diagnosis, be it, and I know there's been plenty of controversy, but our cervical screening programmes have prevented many hundreds of women from being diagnosed with cancer and from dying, and the breast cancer screening programs, and we have the bowel cancer screening programs. So I would hope that we would start some of these education initiatives in our schools, and that the children of today in the future will be very aware that, and it would be like having your blood pressure checked, having your blood sugar checked, having your cholesterol checked, that awareness of cancer, and that I don't mean personal responsibility in terms of preventing the cancer, but personal responsibility. I must go get that checked and so on, rather than the fear that sometimes surrounds it. Oh, I bet I won't.
Because
have that
the fear isn't going to change the outcome. Like if you have something, you're still going to have it if you don't get it dealt with, and if you get it dealt with, you mightn't have it further down the line. Absolutely.
And for those listeners who are interested, the Irish Cancer Society and the HSE have some excellent resources on their websites around that. What I would say is that there's a lot of misinformation out there at the moment, and if you have any doubt, go to a professional, your GP, a nurse colleague, or a reputable website. And similar to if you had an issue with your car, do you go to an unqualified mechanic, or do you go to somebody who's been trained and knows what they're talking about?
Be sensible about it. Brian, thanks very much for talking to me.
Thank you,
Maria. Brian Creedon, consultant palliative medicine physician. He's the national clinical lead for palliative medicine and the former chair of the Solas Cancer Support Centre here in the city. I'll be back with more for you after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to Mulligan's. Did you know you can collect your Blue Club points online? See mulliganspharmacy.com.
You are welcome back to the programme. Willie says, hi Maria, weekend away, so-called work bonding. What a heap of cack. Total waste of time and money for companies. We need more Gardaí though. Drugs, antisocial behaviour way out of control. We used to steal apples out of a neighbour's garden and be so scared doing this. Oh, different times, I can say. And somebody else was talking about, I was saying that whoever managed to persuade us that we could spend, somebody cost them $6.50 for a bottle of water, and I was saying the person who managed to persuade us to buy water in bottles when we got it free out of the tap was some genius. And this texter says, good morning Maria, on the bottled water discussion, Gay Byrne had the guy on the Late Late Show who said he was going to sell bottled water in Ireland. Gay did his best not to laugh at him. I was sitting at home watching. I did laugh. Who's laughing now? I say, yeah, it's unreal when you think, and then we're going to spend this amount of money on water, we're going to sell you water. Yes, we know it comes out of the tap, but yeah, pay us money for our water. We're Egypts at the end of the day, aren't we? Now, complaining is what we're talking about. We've all known them. The constant complainers. They can suck the fun out of any situation and exhaust you in a matter of minutes. Nothing's ever good enough. There's always a problem or something to nitpick. And it can be hard enough to work or be friends with someone who does that. But constant complaining can also take a big toll on your romantic relationships. Bernadette Ryan is a relationships counsellor and psychotherapist, and she's back with her regular slot. And that's what we're talking about. Bernadette, good morning.
Good morning, Maria.
Is it worse if you're married to them as opposed to just having to work with them?
Gosh, well, yes, would be the blunt answer to that, because at least if you work with people, you can sort of distance yourself from them as best you can. So yeah, you could say, complaining is almost like a national sport in this country. We're constantly complaining about the weather and everything, and water charges and all sorts of things. But I think as well, so oftentimes people don't realise that they are complaining all the time.
Yeah.
And it can become a habit, in a relationship, and the other person then habitually can switch off. So the complaints are actually going unheard, and that's part of the problem then that starts to manifest, because the other person kind of can feel that they're invisible, that nobody listens to them, so they continue their complaints louder and whinier and moanier and wonder why nothing is changing, So
if you're complaining, is there a difference between married to somebody who's just complaining about the price of everything, complaining about the weather, or whether they're complaining about you specifically, that nothing you do is good enough, or that, there must be a fine line there between that kind of complaining and nagging, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, or is that complaining?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, there would be the kind of just maybe always looking at things through the glass half empty kind of complaining, But yes, within a relationship, complaining can be kind of have maybe a couple of different aspects to it. Sometimes constant, continuous complaining can be a form of control, which is a different thing again, The other person can never get anything right, so therefore is always wrong-footed. But the positive side, I suppose, of you see, the problem with complaining is that it it can sound like, or it can be heard, or it can be meant as a criticism, in fact.
Yeah.
You know, so in fact, the person feels their character is being criticised. You know, you never pick your socks up off the floor. You know, you do this, you do that. So it kind of puts the person into a defensive position. But the positive aspect of complaining is that, in fact, somebody is trying to change something, usually for the better. You know, so and I come across this all the time with couples. Like, one complains and the other defends, or one criticises and the other defends. All couples do that in arguments, you know. But so it needs to change. That the complaining needs to change to being clear about what it is that you want, which is really change. You're not trying, hopefully, to insult your partner or criticise your partner. So it needs to turn around to what my mantra with couples especially is, because then people say, well, am I just supposed to put up with this? You know, I say no, but complain without the blame. Okay. And that's the kind of art of getting change in a relationship.
So if you have do you make a big deal out of it in a way, in that we know this is something very serious we have to talk about, or do you say, for the love of God and your mother, would you ever stop being such a moan a minute, and kind of lighten it that way, or how do you bring it up as a subject?
Well, again, I think there's two things. That the person who feels maybe put upon needs to have doesn't have to be a deep conversation, you know, sort of saying, you know, gosh, are you aware that, you know, you sort of seem to see the dark side, the negative side of everything, you know? A question, they might not, you know? Yeah. But equally for the person and then the person who finds themselves, oh God, am I always complaining? To sort of take a look at what it is they want. So there's clarity needed between the two people, you know?
And what if they say, but I'm only being honest with you, I thought we could have this open relationship where I can say what's on my mind. What if that's the comeback? I'm only saying what's on my mind.
Well, again, if the person is truly saying what's on their mind, they need to come from a place of the I. You know, I get really anxious when you're speeding, or I get really stressed when the house is messy, as opposed to, you're such a messy person to live with, this place is a pigsty, you know. Yeah. That's immediately heard as a criticism, as a complaint, where the other is, you know, when I say, I'm really upset by that, well, the other person can't actually say, oh no, you're not. Whereas if it's, you made me really upset, no I didn't, yes you did, so it kind of goes down on that negative downward spiral, you know. So when I say about the clarity, it's, you know, and then the other person, if they always do leave their socks on the floor, you know, which is what most couples argue about, by the way, is to take responsibility. Yeah, I know. I could be a bit tidier, and I'll really make an effort. You know,
but if they always leave their socks on the floor, leave the socks on the floor. There'll come a morning when they'll have run out of the socks because they'll all be on the floor, and they'll be going to work with smelly feet, and they might take responsibility for it then.
Yep, that's another tactic, Maria. And it's a bit about, you know, choose your battles. And it's about give and take. You know, somebody who thinks that they can order another adult around continuously in their life to live in the way that they would like them to live is onto a losing battle there, you know. But there is, you know, if some things really, really, really bother somebody, say, look, I just feel so stressed when I come in the evening and the kitchen is a total mess. Then they can sit down and maybe try and find a solution to that together, you know? Yeah. You know, and the other person might say, well, look, I really don't see the need that we have to tidy everything away the minute we finish eating. Yeah. So it's a bit about finding the middle ground and the compromise.
Like everything else, isn't it?
Bearing in mind that long-term, happily married couples will say that 65% of their problems never get resolved. So someone will always leave the toilet seat up. But they learn to give and take. And they learn, you know, what do I want here? Do I want peace and harmony and happiness in our relationship? Or do I want a scrupulously tidy house?
That's why God invented separate bathrooms. Bernadette, thanks for talking to me.
Thanks, Maria.
See you, good luck.
Bye-bye.
That's Bernadette Ryan there, the Déise Today relationships counsellor. She'll be back again in a fortnight. She's a psychotherapist as well, with another topic for you. I'll be back with more for you after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to Mulligan's. Did you know you can collect your Blue Club points online? See mulliganspharmacy.com.
You are welcome back to the programme. Phil says, hi Maria, just back from the States. The water was dire. Couldn't even clean your their teeth with it and they pay for it. The bottled water wasn't much better either. We don't know how lucky we are. We have a wonderful commodity in our water, treated with the respect it deserves, says Phil. I think we just got it because we started going to Spain and we saw that they bought water, and that's how we were so susceptible, because what they were doing on the continent was always so much more sophisticated than what we were doing here at the time. Now, of course, we're streets ahead. Anyway, we're going to talk about furniture next, and a lot of people are, just moved into my new house, and I think I'll go up to some place like IKEA and I'll get this flat pack and I'll build this, load of drawers or something, or I'll build this table, or I'll just go and buy something. And apparently you could go to your local antique shop and get an absolute bargain. To tell me if this is true or not, Rody Keary, antiques auctioneer in Waterford City. RJ Keary Auctioneers, of course, very well known. You're very welcome back to the programme. Long time no see, Rody.
Thanks, Maria.
And I suppose the reason, first of all, I'd say people assume that antique means really, really expensive. Point number one. And secondly, that it's all going, like, nobody wants to sort of furnish their house. What they call it brown furniture, is it now? And it's kind of out of fashion?
Yeah, the modern trend, it says it's out of fashion. But you can make it fashionable. I just only this morning saw a table in a house, and the top, which was the brown furniture, as you call it, mahogany, and she painted the legs blue. But it looked fabulous.
Yeah.
And I have to say that, which is probably against my normal talk, that I would say don't touch it. But I see where people are coming from. Houses are smaller, rooms are smaller, the alcoves are not there, which they were long ago. Doors meet walls. There's no little corner where you can put a piece. So you can lighten it by painting it. And people say, oh, God, you can't paint mahogany. I said you could die outside the front door in an hour's time, God forbid. But you do things that suit yourself. It's just a piece of
furniture at the end of the day.
But as regards for young people, before they buy a new piece of furniture, go and look, not necessarily with me, but go and look at an antique shop. Spend an hour, have a look at the prices, look at the estimates at an auction, and they won't believe it, what they can buy. They'd furnish a house for absolutely nothing at the moment.
And the thing about these things, if they're still, they're built to last. There's an awful lot of craftsmanship went into them.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, the modern word now is it's handmade. That's absolute nonsense. The only handmade is it's hand movable. But as regards structurally, not at all. It's all done by machine. But the older items are all done by hand. The dovetails, all the joints, the T-joints, all that type of thing. And it's there to last. But I mean, some people just like to go and change it after 3 or 4 years or 2 years or whatever it is. And that's their prerogative. But have a look. That's what I would say.
Yeah, because I think the idea, because the person that wrote this piece here, like, they were talking about how they furnished their house and they bought real, I think it's a 60s drinks trolley or something, which were all the rage. I think in the 60s everybody had one of these things that with a hostess trolley or something.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
And you pushed them around and you had all your drinks on it. It was the high sophistication. And she bought an original one of those for a very reasonable price, and they're 4 times the price, a reproduction in a furniture shop.
Yeah. But it's not every house that you can have a drinks trolley when you have children around.
Nor should you.
So like one has to look at it from that perspective.
But you could use it for anything.
You could, of course, yeah. But normally they have the little sections for the bottles and the glasses, so it's not as much a usable piece. It's a show-off piece. And a lot of people don't understand that as I said, the houses are smaller, so these are sort of impractical pieces. Like, I have a lovely bureau at the moment for auction. This man brought it in from New Ross, and I had to just tell him 15 years ago it would have made 2,500, and he would be lucky to get €300 to €400 for it. And it's absolutely in mint condition, beautiful quality. The man was...
And will that cycle go again, and mahogany would be the thing everybody's looking for, or that kind of quotes?
Yeah. Well, I think it probably will. People will see through, but it takes time. It's like everything. People have to just go through that phase and that. But in the meantime, we must try and keep selling it and try and do the best we can. But it is a shame to see what items are making now compared to years ago.
And what are people coming into you? Diane, have you got any of such and such a thing?
Well, dining rooms are finished. As far as I see. Dining room tables and chairs are a very hard sell with us today. I'd say if we have a good dining table today, it's going for a boardroom, not as a dining table. People are eating in the kitchen, or as they all say now, on a tray on your knee
lap,
opposite the television. Yeah. So also, and going back to that bureau, which is a desk, everybody is texting. There's nobody writing anymore. So the whole involvement of that has changed. You take in the hallway in most old houses, you had a hall stand to hold the coat.
Yeah.
Not
anymore. No.
Not anymore. Or sticks or umbrellas. So it's the fashions, and also with all the new television programs, they're showing them minimalistic way of doing things.
Yeah.
And but I think if one is sensible, you can mix the old with the new. You don't have all new. You don't have to have all old.
Yeah.
And everything doesn't have to match. I have people coming into me, the colour of the piece she has is dark and she wants the same. I said, do you go out with a dark jumper, a dark top, a dark trousers? You don't. You mix it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, if they'd listen and get advice properly, they'd furnish for nothing.
Don't always look at YouTube, because you'll have everything grey in your house, everything grey, white and silver. That'll be your entire house, and it'll all be that white IKEA furniture with the small little trays. That's what everybody on YouTube seems to have. Yeah. But I think to be able to furnish your home with things that they're still intact after so many years.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's a bit of a no-brainer.
And they can be refurbished, that's the point about it.
And as you say, don't worry about painting them. Paint the
hell out of them. They can always be stripped again,
Pleasure talking to you.
Not at all. You're welcome,
I'll talk to you again soon, I'm sure. That's Rhodey Keary, antiques auctioneer with Waterford City. RJ Keary, of course, is what you're looking for. This text says from Patricia, I got a wonderful big wardrobe in Rhodey's for some years ago. I live in a 3-bed semi. Definitely bargains to be had. Thanks, Rhodey. Back with more after these. Let's see what Dermot Power has for us today.
These are the days of our lives. The days of our lives on WLR.
Brought to you by Home Instead Senior Care Waterford. When it comes to Waterford seniors, only the best home care will do. Homeinstead.ie.
Radio quizzes are great fun, and because people can't be seen, it allows them to say the most outrageous things on air. Like the girl who was asked, who was Ireland's new rugby coach? To which she replied, a Bus Éireann coach. Another answer the same girl gave to a question, name a yellow fruit, her reply was, an orange. She seemed surprised when she got no question right. When asked to name a bird with a long neck, a fellow replied, Naomi Campbell, who, as you know, is a very, very tall model. Another, when asked what is the capital of France, replied F, as in the letter F. He was right, I suppose, but Paris is the correct answer. Another fellow, when asked to name an occupation where you might need a torch, he replied, a burglar. I'm sure his mammy was delighted with that one. On one radio DJ, whose name was Larry, was trying to make it easy on a fella that was getting a lot of questions wrong. So we decided to give him an easy question. He asked, finished his saying, as happy as, expecting him to say Larry, as his name was Larry. Instead, your man said, as happy as a pig in shite, which is incidentally is one of my favourite sayings. Chinese and Indian restaurant names also create havoc with quizzes. With names like the Great Wall, one radio contestant replied when asked, where is the Great Wall? To which he replied, opposite the dental hospital. Of course, the Great Wall is in China. The Taj Mahal is another great name that people will identify with an Indian restaurant and is often the butt of jokes on radio. To conclude, a friend of mine was in a quiz many years ago in the Glass Factory Social and Sports Club on the Cork Road. The quizmaster asked him, what's the name of the river that flows through Waterford? My friend replied, the Kay River, which is exactly what I would have said. To which the quizmaster said, I'll give you a hint. Are you sure? To which my friend replied, I'm positive. True story. Talk to you soon.
These are the days of our lives. The days of our lives on WLR.
Brought to you by Home Instead Senior Care Waterford. Providing the most trusted local home care for your loved ones since 2009. Homeinstead.ie.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and in Tramore.
You are welcome back to the programme. This texter says, Maria, I have a very old china cabinet with original china cabinets, remember them, with original glass door and glass shelves. I love it, but I don't use it. Ask your guest, am I mad to upcycle it by painting it? You heard what he said. Paint the bloody thing. Once you're making use of it, it doesn't matter. Like, they're quality pieces of furniture and and they shouldn't be just left kind of, just left to go to waste for the want of a lick of paint. Somebody sometime in the future will strip all that paint off and go, what kind of an idiot painted this mahogany cabinet? Won't make any difference to you. You'll have gotten some pleasure out of it in the meantime. Now, 3 people in studio with me. I have Michael Garland, who was very familiar to this programme. I have Trish Quinn, South East Regional Coordinator with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, plus Fiona Holland. And Fiona is a female cyclist, because these people are all, you're not doing it, Trish, right? You are. Trish is doing it as well. They're all going to be doing the race around Ireland for Make-A-Wish this coming weekend. It starts on the 25th of August, Michael, does it?
Sunday. We're off just after 2 o'clock on Sunday. And
tell them the distance.
2,150 kilometres. All turning left, so it's nice and easy. All the way around the coast, from Trim, right up the north, right down the west coast, back the south coast, up the east coast, and finish in Trim. And hopefully, if we get a falling wind, we'll be back sometime Wednesday evening. And people can live track us as well. There's a black box tracker as well. We're doing it for Make-A-Wish. It's a huge undertaking. We've 8 cyclists, 4 drivers, 4 cars, 24/7 cycling through the night. No stops in effect.
You're not even doing a relay thing. You're all going to be cycling.
Yeah, we do a relay. So we do 30 kilometres each. This is what we're going to do. And to tell the truth, we're all part of the Biscuit Club, and we all enjoy cycling very much. We're all recycling ourselves as such because we're all old.
Painting you
so we're all doing well, and we got great support. We're doing it, as I said, for Make-A-Wish, but we've got great support from sponsors. We've got RS Connect, the company we unfortunately closed down at the start of this year. They've sponsored the entry fee. Versatile locally, DHL, Moynihan Couriers, VR Education have all come on board. Vodafone locally have given us some dongles, so it's been great. We're looking forward to it. I'm excited. I've done my hair for it, so it's good. It's full steam ahead now.
No. Did you do anything to get past the line first, even without having any hair to give you any drag on it? Fiona, how did you get involved?
I cycled with the lads. I kind of explained, I don't remember saying yes, and I really don't remember saying no. And then it was a little bit too late because there was nobody else stepping up to take in, and you realised I need to stay in here. Part of me, I actually didn't think it would come to fruition. Truthfully, I said it'll be something and I won't lose face. I'll have stuck in with the lads. But this team of people are out on their own, and there is an ambition to see this driven home. And so I'm part of it, and it is very exciting to be with these people who have so much energy. And all I'm thinking about is cycling at the minute.
And how much cycling would you do in a normal week?
I suppose, like anybody, you're working, raising family, so it's the weekend, Saturday and Sunday really, and then you cycle hard.
But have you had to do more in training for this, or are you just that good from the outset?
I don't know. I suppose I can only cycle when I have the time. So realistically, it tends to be the weekend, and then they are hard cycles. And Michael Garland is very much an average speed, which means that
That's
you
pretty
are
average already.
No, the average speed means that you're killing yourself. So,
oh really?
Yeah. Oh no. Average speed. So if you go up a hill slow, that means you're going to be.
That's okay.
You're going to be flat out.
In fairness, Fiona's a super cyclist. She's an ex-triathlete as well. So we've got 8 really good cyclists. But the other side of the coin is, and I know Trish will talk about it, we've 4 support crew who will help us in the car with the navigation, because to navigate your way around Ireland in a car is relatively easy, but on a bike it's much harder because you've got to check the routes when you're going through cities and so on and so forth. We're up all the main hills in Ireland as well. We're in Malin, we're in Mizzen, we're all the big hills in Kerry, we're up Mount Leinster, so we're doing the whole gamut of the things. So all we ask for is for the man upstairs to give us a wind behind us to push us along.
Tricia, fair dues to you. You're not just going to be waiting at the finish of it to collect the money. You're doing it too.
Yeah, so I'm one of the crew. So I'm driving, which for me is actually, I think I'd prefer to be cycling. It's a real challenge because my sense of direction, I haven't told the team that
problems
yet.
in Youghal.
It's not great. I'm also supposed to be there as a bike mechanic, and I've yet to change a puncture for myself. But I'll keep the good wishes flowing and keep the team spirit high, hopefully.
And the Make-A-Wish Foundation, which is what it's all about. Just tell us about
well,
that.
Look, this is it's amazing. It's amazing it's always amazing when we get chosen as a beneficiary for an event. But this is especially special to me because my partner is one of the cyclists as well, and I cycle with all these guys too. And I'm really humbled that they chose Make-A-Wish, and to say the effort that they have put in like just the sponsorship that's coming in and just the contacts that we've made and the exposure that Make-A-Wish have gotten has been just tremendous. We know, all the team in Make-A-Wish, and if you were to ask any parent of any wish child how important Make-A-Wish is, we all know that it's a necessity, but unfortunately not everybody sees it as a necessity yet. That it's a bit of a luxury for a child to have a wish. But we know firsthand that like every child that has to go through a journey of an illness, that what Make-A-Wish does is it brings just such happy memories and joy. If I could just share one quote with you, just coincidentally, I got a lovely thank you card from a family this morning. I won't mention the child, but it said, "We had an absolute amazing week doing what our son does best, splashing, eating and laughing. Thank you for the excuse to spend such quality time having fun together in a really difficult year. It helped us remember what's truly important, fun and memories, forever grateful." And I think that it was a coincidence that came in my post this morning, but it really sums up what we do and the impact that we do have on families. So I guess
I think it's just a pause and a bit of happiness where maybe happiness has been a bit of a stranger to what you've been, because of what you've been going through.
And a lot of the feedback.
Remember when we used to do this thing called
That's the feedback we get all the time. And I mean, I can sing it, but when you hear it firsthand from a family, it takes the illness away from the child. It gives them respite from the illness for a while, and it gives the other siblings a chance to see their son or their brother or sister as on par with them as well, and the child that they were before the illness. So it's really important.
They're forgotten a lot, I think, as well, in that if you have a very sick child in a family, another sibling or other siblings can be kind of just, not ignored, but all the focus.
It splits the family, it splits it. And often, one parent is in Dublin, maybe in Crumlin for long periods, and then the other parent is at home. Often families one parent has to give up work, or both parents have to suspend work. So we are, the generosity that we've received so far has been, as I said, has been incredible. But we hope that I will be in the car. I'll also be doing the Instagram for the Make-A-Wish page, keeping people updated. I've just met Ollie in the corridor there as well. So he said we'll keep posted, and I'll keep in touch with the breakfast show and yourselves. So it adds to our location and that. And I just hope around the country, I think it'll really drum up a lot of support, because we have wish families, all over, and we have great support with our volunteers all over the country.
They must be hugely grateful for.
I've already got
5,000 is the target.
Yeah, but even the Wish family is great, because my daughter has got a graduation on Monday, and we're up in Derry, and of course I couldn't miss her graduation. We nearly got divorced of it. And Trish put out a call, and a Make-A-Wish family, there's a gentleman called Mark O'Sullivan who's going to actually drive me down from Derry at 1:30, 2 in the morning on Monday to get me to Limerick in time for my daughter's graduation, which is great. Brilliant. And then the other side of the coin is George, who kind of put this together. He works for DHL. He's basically going to courier me with a sticker on my head from Limerick all the way back up to Galway, so I can rejoin the thing. So just the effort that everyone's put together. And just to say on the Make-A-Wish thing, we're all very lucky. We're all adults now. We've all got families, and we're still cycling and are all reasonably fit in our late 40s, in my case early 50s. So we know that that we're very lucky to be mobile, and when we see what the money raised can do for the families, it's huge, and we're delighted that Make-A-Wish are on board, and we're thrilled. And the bottom line is we're in it to win it. We're a Waterford team, so keep an eye on us.
And $5,000 is the amount that you want to raise. You've been listening to Michael Garland there, Tricia Quinn, South East Regional Coordinator with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and also Fiona Holland, who will be cycling as well. Best of luck to all of you.
Thank you.
And you have brought the show to a close today. You have been listening to Déise Today, brought to you in association with Mulligan's Pharmacy. You just had a text from someone who says, "I feel like a sheik. I have a dozen work wives in WLR and I love them all." We love you too, Matt. Thanks very much to everybody who was on the programme today. Jeff's standing by to take over with lots of great music, so you keep it right here on WLR. I'll talk to you again in the morning. See ya. Bye-bye.